The thing itself, the power back of everything. I'm Randy Tenckhoff, and I've been a practitioner here since 2014. In fact, I was trained by Sandy Gohlke, and a shout out for Reverend Duchess. And I am so happy to be here. I'm a little nervous, though. How about you, Sandy?
That fits. Science Mind book.
Ready?
Ready.
Okay, here we go. And this is my first time using the device because of the two of us. How did I end up being the technological one? Okay, here we go. The science of mind. So, here it is, the science of mind. I first got my first Science of Mind book. It was in 2007. It's when the center was at the California Park facility, and Reverend Michael and Reverend Louie were having a poker run. And my son Derek won. And as he was going up there, I would go, get the book, get the book. And he's like, no, I want to get the basket with all the soaps and lotions. I'm like, really? Come on. Are you going to use soaps and lotions? I'll use that book. I got my book.
And so I brought my Science of Mind also, and between the two of us, it's like, well, how long have you been a practitioner? And it's like, oh, I don't know. But I've had the story that, well, I've been studying this 20 years or so. But as we spoke, I opened the book, and in the back of it, I purchased this book with probably one of my very first Science of Mind classes, and that happened to be in 1982. So I guess I've been in this teaching for about 35 years. Wow. Yeah. So when the dedication of our Science of Mind book, it reads that the Science of Mind lessons are dedicated to that truth which frees man from himself and sets him to see through the mist to the eternal and changeless reality.
And so that's what we're going to be learning here. In the Science of Mind textbook, behind the table of contents, there is a study guide. And it's a yearly study guide. And that's available for each of us just to do. So the first numbers are the pages of the book. The numbers after that, those would be the paragraphs. In Science of Mind, this text is a textbook. It's something we study. And it's a study of spiritual principles for a practical, everyday use. So here are the first 4 chapters. The first 4 chapters are kind of like the first 15 minutes of a movie. If you walk in late, yeah, you could catch up and you could figure it out. But if you watch it from the very beginning, you get it. You can follow along. These chapters are the foundational stones. They help us and guide us on what Ernest Holmes is actually trying to teach us. And it's not just our center that's talking about these 4 chapters. It's pretty much across the board. In fact, I was talking to Reverend Duchess, and they're mixing it up. They're going to start at chapter 4 and go 4, 3, 2, 1. Because every year, this is what we do. Because it is important. And as you're reading Science of Mind, and if you're feeling like you're not getting it, just keep reading on. Because Ernest Holmes puts things in so many different ways to allow the common person, us, to be able to pick it up. So don't get frustrated. And remember, it is itself as you. We're talking about you here. So, the study of Science of Mind is a study of first cause, spirit, mind, or that invisible essence, that ultimate stuff, and intelligence from which everything comes, the power back of creation, the thing itself. So look at here, Ernest Holmes, he uses 10 different words to describe the one thing, what we call God, the Alpha, the Omega, the everything, and the no thing. I think he wanted his words, regardless of the language or the understanding that it was translated into, to capture everybody who wanted to have it. But before there was everything, when there was nothing,
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form, or the darkness was over all. Then the Spirit of God moved and faced the deep. God said, let there be light. And there was light. God saw the light was full, so he divided the light from the dark. God called the light day. God called night.
Well, there it is. Charlton Heston would not lie. Go L.Cid. What are we going to do? Or we could take it from this. What does Stephen Hawking say? Were the rules of the universe so compelling that it created itself? What is it we're trying to do? What we're trying to do is we want to put words to something that Emma Curtis Hopkins, who's our New Thought pioneer, described as ineffable. When you have that conscious contact to the one, it's beyond expression. Yet, here we are always trying to express it. So how did Rumi express it? Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there. Okay, how many people have heard that here? Come on. Okay, but what's the second part? When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. So even Rumi is admitting it's ineffable. That oneness, that unity goes beyond ideas, language, and separation of self. So, we think of metaphysics perhaps as something that only the most profound thinkers have known about. But we should remember that we are also the thinkers. Who is this we that Ernest Holmes is talking about? He's talking about us. He's talking about this community. We are the thinkers. You could do it. And if you're reading Ernest Holmes and you get caught, try reading it out loud, because a lot of his stuff was verbal information that got written down. We are those thinkers. The profound thought of all ages has stood in awe of life itself, realizing that here is a power and potentiality, the highest possibilities of which the human intellect cannot fathom. Yet here we are again, trying to fathom it. Why? Because it's beautiful. It's an opportunity for each of us in our own way to go out and discover, make that discovery for themselves. We each walk our own spiritual path. And it's a beautiful discovery. Lao Tzu wrote, as rivers have their source in some far-off fountain, so the human spirit has its source. To find this fountain of spirit is to learn the secret of heaven and earth. We are looking for our fountain of spirit. That's why we, you, I, that's why we're sitting in these seats. We're looking for that connection to home. And it's not just these seats, it's seats all over. Different seats, different thoughts, different people, because we're all individuated from the one source. And it's all good because it's all God. And as Ernest Holmes taught, no matter where you are on that path, your understanding in that moment is perfect for you in that moment. Yet he tells us, and he warns us, universal principles are never respecters of persons. The universe plays no favorites. So, if you take blue and yellow, what color do you have? It doesn't matter where you're sitting, you're going to have green, because that's the law. It doesn't know why, you don't have to know why, that when you add blue to yellow, it makes green. You know that it makes green, and that's the law. It's a physical law on this planet. And on this planet, which is in this universe, The universal principle plays no favorite. The physical laws, the spiritual principles follow the same format. And Ernest Holmes alerted us. He said, we do well to listen to this inner voice. Why? Because this inner voice is that oneness that you are seeking. And that inner voice will tell us of a wonderful life that's beyond our scope of imagining, of a love beyond our fondest dreams, and of a freedom which the soul craves. In fact, Ernest Holmes, in his book, A New Design, or A New Design for Living, which was written and published 1 year before he died. So we have the book from the beginning and the book from the end. He sticks with it, love and law. He clearly states that love is the lodestone of life. Okay, lodestone. I had to look it up. I didn't know what lodestone meant. I'm like, these antiquated words. But this was written, I was alive when that was written. So, lodestone means the one that attracts strongly. It's that point that everything goes to. He says, love is the lodestone of life and is a feeling that must permeate everything we do and are. In fact, it is a fundamental on which all else is based. If we go back to the Science of Mind book in the first chapter, it said, but the great love of the universe must be one with the great law of its own being. And we approach love through the law. This then is the teaching, love and law. As the love of God is perfect, so the law of God is perfect. And we must understand both. He says it right there. So, if you love the color purple, and all you have on your color palette is blue and yellow, bam, you need to go out there and create a different understanding for yourself. Understand that the universe is not limited, that you have that possibility of getting red on your color palette. It is out there for you. Each one of us has an individuated color palette for us, for our discovery of that oneness and the conscious connection with God. And so, going back to the Science of Mind, he says, man by thinking can bring into his experience whatsoever he desires. This is not done by holding thoughts, but by thinking correctly and becoming a living embodiment of this thought, by knowing the truth. So you got to get red in your color palette. It's a lot.
I can't hear it. Play it again.
Okay. Let's hear that one more time, because
It's worth hearing.
let's turn that up.
Explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old, okay? Because there's an element to this thing I just cannot get in my head.
Some of you might agree. So I'd like to direct your attention to the screen behind me, and I like to think I'm not blocking it, but I don't quite know where to put myself. Many of you who have done some teaching of Science of Mind recognize this as the teaching symbol. However, for today's purposes, I'd like you to look at this image and see this as representing ourselves. This includes our conscious part of the mind that knows all, is all. This is a part of us that is subjective and where the law is, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the form that we know as ourselves, our arms, our legs, our moving around, our relationships. And then this is everything else. It's the air we breathe, it's the thoughts, it's our neighbors, it's everything else. So the thing itself, where is it? Is the thing itself here? Is the thing itself here? Yes, the thing itself is all there is. It's everywhere. So what is this thing itself? You can't hold it. You can't hear it, whoops, with your human ear. You can't see it with your eyes. You can't taste it with your tongue. But yet, we know that there is something. There's something out there. No, there's something in here that is that infinite conscious mind. We refer to this thing as conscious mind. I don't know if I need to get this back on my ear. It seems to have taken a leap. So the thing, the self, is this power behind creation. It is that spiritual, formless stuff that we hear of, we know of. It exists, but we can't put our hands on it because it's not tangible. It just simply is. Out of itself, Spirit has made man and woman individualized to discover for ourselves our true nature. We are all made from this one infinite presence, that this Spirit, this God, we may call it God, Atman, Buddha, Source, many, many names. And all that it is this power, this presence, this love, this peace, joy, beauty, many, many attributes. And it's the truth of who we are. But we don't always recognize it or remember it. So this absolute consciousness is present within us, and we refer to it as conscious mind. And for us, our conscious mind is how we use it. No human thought or belief can change this absolute, perfect presence of divine mind. While divine conscious mind is the absolute truth of our being, in our form physical experience, we have many experiences that appear different than this perfection that was just described. And if that weren't the case, then we'd all be living up here in this perfect conscious place, and we'd all be mystics. But truly, we are spiritual beings because we've come from this spiritual stuff. It's who and what we really are. And yet, we're having this human experience. For instance, walking around in our dailiness. This morning, perhaps you left your home and you had a misunderstanding, an argument, something that didn't feel so good with maybe a spouse, a neighbor, a friend. And so you might have been walking around feeling angry, unappreciated, perhaps even judgmental about that person, that how they wronged you. Well, in that moment, it's unlikely that you would be able to easily see yourself in the plane of that perfection, of that love, of that peace, of that harmony, because there's all this human stuff going on. So how does all this work, you may ask me, if we're to believe that this thing itself, this perfection, this love, this peace, this magnificence is truly who I am, then how does that pertain to me? How can I use it? Well, the divine plan is one of freedom. It's every soul's birthright. And it's in this opportunity to select, to choose moment by moment what we believe. And it's out of habits that we may believe that we may be a little bit sloppy at times, or we may believe maybe we're not quite so smart, or who knows what stories we have heard through the ages and come to identify that as who we think we are. And it is what we present to the world, but we are always something more greater. We live in a field of creative mind. Mind is what the thing itself is. It is what we use. It is this creative field that we also refer to as law because it responds perfectly to whatever we put into it. It's not simply a thought that we have, but it's that habit of thought. It's that belief that is deeper than a single thought, but beliefs that we've accumulated over time. Now, those beliefs are different than truth, oftentimes, but they're our reality because it's what we've come to believe. So we live in that field of creative mind, and the way that law responds to our belief and makes it so, it's like Jell-O. If you had a box of cherry Jell-O and you poured it into the bowl, you mixed it with a spoon, refrigerated it, you'd get strawberry Jell-O. Wouldn't be orange Jell-O, wouldn't be lemon Jell-O, it would be exactly what that stuff was that you put into that bowl. Now that's a physical law, but this works the same for us as a mental law, because it's what, from our thoughts, from our beliefs, that we put into mind that creates our experience. So God is the only principle and the only presence and power in the whole universe waiting for our recognition. So when we're in a situation that isn't what we want, doesn't feel good, it's hurtful, whatever, that we have that opportunity to lift our thoughts and our consciousness and to recognize and to remember, I still point at that image that's not there, to recognize that there is that higher truth of who we are and that all things are possible. So I will share my own personal story at this point.
Get this one here.
I'm in a situation where I don't have a choice in the matter.
I've never met a situation where I don't have a choice in the matter. How easy to forget. About a month ago, Reverend Kathy asked all the practitioners to step up to the plate, so to speak, and do a talk each 4 weeks that represents the chapters. Well, I said yes. I agreed. And in the meantime, my human thoughts kept coming up with reasons why I couldn't do this. In the meantime, I kept moving my feet because we put something into mind and mind responds to it and makes it so, but it's not like just dropping a pedal into the pool. We have to move our feet and do what's necessary to make change possible. So I kept rereading the chapters. I kept rewriting the script of what I might say. At one point, I thought of bringing all these papers and tearing them up in front of you because, you know, that's not what I'm here to say by any means. There's something deeper. There's something with meaning that is different than what I might have written on a page or what I would write now if I were to write it again. And so what happened for me was I had to shift my consciousness. But first, it says, a clip from the Bible, but first, seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. So that had personal meaning for me because again and again and again, I had to shift my consciousness to that higher plane of the conscious mind where I truly believe that all things are possible. And so by agreeing to do this, I have been put to the edge of my faith because it was Saturday night or Friday night, I called Michael and I said, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done. I said, I need help. Now the help I needed wasn't for Michael to tell me what to do. It wasn't even really for him to hold my hand. It was my opportunity to say, I'm human, this is really hard, yet I believe. And his agreement for me is, I shall remember the truth about you. Well, I already knew the truth, but how nice it was to be able to reach out beyond myself and to be reminded that there is something greater. It's operating here and now. And so this is our presentation of chapter 1. So I shifted my belief, and mental law responded to my renewed belief that all things are possible, and how grateful I am for that. So while this simplistic form may be reduced to making this sound really simple or easy, I emphasize that we are all here on this earth having a human experience. And oftentimes, that human experience is one that does not feel very good. And we make choices that may not reflect that highest potential within us. And at the same time, there remains that all-present thing itself that is consciously within our whole being, knowing that higher truth of our being and able to support us.
And ignorance of that fact does not excuse you from the effects. And Ernest Holmes says why? Because we are dealing with the law and not with whimsical fancy. Okay, this isn't magic church. We don't think magic happens. No, we know that God happens, and it happens from within. And you can't explain it to other people. You can, but everybody has to experience that for themselves. What Science of Mind does, it teaches you the ability to respond to the things that happen in your life. It gives you response ability. And in Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote, there is one mental law in the universe, and where we use it, it becomes our law because we have individualized it. And it is not a matter of fate, it is a matter of cause and effect.
So I'd like to read from page 33 of the text. No matter what emotional storm, there is always something hidden in the inner being that has never been violated. We may stumble, but there is always that eternal voice and real essence forever whispering in our ear. The greater next to be is unfolding with divine guidance. If we define something difficult to grasp, then we shall never grasp it, because we will always think of it as being incomprehensible. Within us is the mind that governs everything. This is the simplicity. This is the thing itself.
In Ernest Holmes' last paragraph in A Design for New Living, his last book, he states this, and I love it. The great adventure lies ahead of you. Discover within yourself the divine spark which may be fanned into the glowing flame, giving you warmth and security. The light from it can certainly and surely guide you to the greatest experience any man can have, the experience of the presence of God, to whom and through whose laws all things are possible. And he ends with,
May you go with God.